Hi, I'm Pink1402, aka Taylor, and today I'm going to be talking about Superman. And as you can see, I got my Superman shirt on. Superman is my favorite uh, comic book character of all time, and I'm going to be talking about the comics, the uh, movies, and the TV shows. So, and then also about the curse. The curse is probably the biggest thing that I will talk about because I know so much about the curse. And so, without further ado, begin. So, uh, let me begin with the comics. So, Superman began in 1933, and it was created by Jerry Siegel, and Joe Shuster, and they were high school students, and they and what happened was they I believe it was Jerry Siegel. He came up with the idea, and then he passed it along to his friend Joe Shuster, and they bounced off ideas between one another, and they were like, okay, well, okay, I like this idea. Okay, well, how about this? And originally, uh, when they created it, no one they tried sending it to different publications. They wanted to get it like syndicated. They wanted it to be in like newspapers, like a comic strip, but it never worked. But they finally got Detective Comics, who at the time was Action Comics, which now everyone knows is DC. DC bought them, and they were originally sent to, as far as I know, they were sent as sent in care packages. They were sent in this little booklet, and it was a care packages to our troops. And little known fact, everyone thinks, oh, Superman was able to fly. He's been able to fly his whole entire time that he's been in the comic books. No, originally he was not able to fly. He could only leap. Uh, uh, he originally uh, he wasn't able to fly. He was only able to leap buildings in a single bound. But now he can fly. He didn't start flying until I believe the 1940s or 1950s. It was around the time that the TV show came out, The Adventures of Superman, and they've had several spin-offs of the comics. They've had The Adventures of Superman, Man of Steel, and Superman, of course, and like it's really weird. Like the weirdest comic that I've seen so far of Superman is one. What I've seen two, and one of them I actually have with me right here. It's Superman and Robin. This one, I was like, what? Superman and Robin? Like Robin's a Batman character. Why is Robin associated with Superman? But that's what happened. And then the other one was with Poison Ivy. It was Superman and Poison Ivy. They were the cover of the comic book was uh I believe it was either Poison Ivy or Superman was sitting on Lois's headstone because Lois had died. Lois Lane had died, and Superman's like making out with Poison Ivy. I'm like, no, Poison Ivy is a Batman character. No, 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 you don't do that. But those are the two weirdest ones that I've seen. And the comic book is very popular. It's like Superman is probably the second most popular character that DC has, and although like there hasn't been a whole lot of movies that have came out with Superman, there's been more with Batman because Batman's more popular, and also because they can't find the right director to direct the movie. They had it right in the 70s and 80s with Richard Donner of the first Superman movie, and they had it right. But then the the Salkinds, they were the producers of the original Superman movies with Christopher Reeve. They were the producers, and they didn't want Richard Donner doing the second one. So they were like, okay, we don't want Richard Donner. We're gonna get Richard Lester. He did the Beatles, A Hard Day's Night. He's done so many movies. He's great. And they had already filmed what Richard Donner wanted to do was he wanted to film both Superman and Superman 2 simultaneously, so back to back. And so Richard Donner had already was pretty much finished with Superman 2 filming that. Well, Saul Kynes didn't want him doing Superman 2, so they got Richard Lester, and Richard Lester took Richard Donner's ideas and basically it was basically Richard Donner's movie with a few changes. There are a few changes, and I like the Richard Donner version better, as you can tell. Hold on, right here. This is a Richard Donner cut. This one is my favorite out of all the Superman movies I've ever seen. This one's my favorite, and actually I've already showed you 2 comics, but I gotta show you these 2. I have 3 Superman comics, and I've read all 3 of them, and I got this one because I wanted a Wonder Woman comic because I love Wonder Woman as well, and Aquaman. No, I want any hates in the comments for Aquaman. Aquaman's awesome. But I wanted a Wonder Woman comic, but I didn't have the money for a Wonder Woman comic. So I was like, because I had to get my niece's birthday present. So I was like, okay, I'll just get this one. I'll get this one, and it's got Wonder Woman on it. That's awesome. And I loved it. It was awesome, and that's just how it is. That's just the way it is. Yeah. And I've seen every single live action Superman movie, and I own 2 live action Superman movies. My dad owns 5. He owns the one I just showed you, and then the 4. He owns the 4 original ones. And I apologize, my neighbor's mowing their lawn. So if you hear anything in the background, hear any weird noises in the background, that's my neighbor mowing his lawn. But this is this one. And out of these 4, my favorite is 2. But my least favorite, you'd probably think, oh, it's probably Quest for Peace. Superman 4 Quest for Peace is probably your least favorite. No, actually it's not. It's not. I'm one of those people that doesn't think Quest for Peace is bad. I'm one of those people that doesn't think Quest for Peace is bad. I think Superman 3 is worse than Quest for Peace. Because at least with Quest for Peace, Nuclear Man could be a Superman villain. He could be a villain in the comics. Richard Pryor would never be a villain in a Superman comic. A supercomputer would not be a Superman villain in the comics. But Nuclear Man could be. And the only redeeming quality that 3 has is the fight scene. And the reason why I hated 3 was because of the reasons that I just told you, but also I hated it because Lex Luthor isn't in it. There's no, if you take out Lex Luthor, if you're going to take out Lex Luthor, why don't you put in Mr. Mxyzptlk or Doomsday or Darkseid, which I think they were going to put in Doomsday. They were going to put both Doomsday and Mr. Mxyzptlk in the 3rd one, but because of the way the story was set up, they were going to have Doomsday come in and fight Superman, and then have Mr. Mxyzptlk come in later on when Superman travels to another universe. Mr. Mxyzptlk comes in, and he has to defeat the 2 of them along with the help of Supergirl. Well, the reason why that idea was shot down was because it was great up until they decided, oh, let's have Supergirl and Superman be romantically involved. No, they're cousins. You don't do that. They're cousins. But they shot down that idea, and plus Richard Pryor loved Superman. He wanted to be in the movies, and so they were like, well, let's put Richard Pryor in here. the other reason why I hated it was because Lois Lane was only in it for like 8 minutes, like 8 to 10 minutes, and I'm like, you take Lois Lane out of that movie, you take me out of that movie. You cannot have a movie without Lois Lane. You can't have a Superman movie without Lois Lane. And also, the other thing about it was, yeah, I get Lana. You can have Lana in there, but it made no sense. It made no sense. It didn't follow. It didn't follow it. Like if you're going to, like if you should have had like Superman one, like Superman the movie was more of like a background movie to Superman. Well, you should have had more Lana in that movie, and then two should have been when he shows up to the Daily Planet and meets Lois and falls in love with Lois, and it should have went like that. It should have went in order. Don't pull a Star Wars and you know I love Star Wars. Don't pull a Star Wars and be like, oh, let's start with book 3. Makes no sense, but let's start with book 3, and then after book 3 we'll go to book 1. No, don't do that. Stay with storyline. But I love these movies, but I hate the third one. The third one is my least favorite. And then I have this one I got at local flea market in Tulsa. Superman Returns. I've seen it once. I didn't care for it too much. It was better than 3. I will give it that. It was better than 3, but not that much better. And actually, this one almost didn't happen. They were originally supposed to do a movie called Superman Lives. They were going to do a movie called Superman Lives. Well, they couldn't get that one off the ground, so they were like, okay, well, let's change the title to Superman Reborn. And they were going to have, get this, they were going to have Nicolas Cage play Superman. You can go and look up, there's pictures, there's images of Nicolas Cage in the Superman costume, in the Superman outfit online. It's in black and white, and it's super creepy. And I don't know what they were thinking getting Nicolas Cage, because Nicolas Cage at the time had long hair. Superman does not have long hair. You cannot do that. So this one almost didn't happen, but it was just a weird concept. It's like, why is Perry's nephew Richard in this? Why is he in this? Why is he acting like this? Like why? Just why? It just, some of it didn't make sense, and yeah. Then I recently got this one. I got this one for Christmas, Man of Steel, for Christmas last year, and I love this movie, and I liked it. I just didn't like how it was too much like Superman the movie. It was too much like that. It was like, oh, let's talk about Superman. Let's do an origin story for Superman. Like, it's like, no one's ever done that before. Yeah, they have. I mean, like, the thing I liked but didn't like was the beginning, which is where they're on Krypton, and it's like, oh, they're on Krypton. Oh, good. You see like what Krypton like really should have looked like, but I just couldn't get into it. I couldn't get into the actor, Russell Crowe. I couldn't get into Russell Crowe's version of Jor-El. I liked Marlon Brando better as Jor-El. That's just my opinion. And also, I didn't like the fact that like it was kind of like it was a remake of like Superman the movie and Superman 2 put into one. It's like because Superman 2 had General Zod, and Man of Steel has General Zod, and it's not my favorite, but I will say it's better than Superman 3. I think any Superman movie that comes out after in the near future will be better than Superman 3. I just didn't care for it as much because it's like I already know how Superman started. I already know like all about it. But what I did like about it was it was a little bit more detailed. in the sense of like, oh, it was a little more detailed in the sense of like, oh, he's in school, he's having to deal with his powers, like he's having to hide all of his powers, he's having to deal with his powers and control his powers, he's having to control them. And that's what I liked about it. I liked that he had to control them. Like he controlled his powers, had to learn how to control them, and his mom, who was played by uh Diane Lane, helped him control it. And she had no clue what to do with him, but she still loved him. And that's what I liked about it. Now on to the TV shows. So the TV shows, there have been quite a few Superman TV shows. There's been animated shows, and there's been live action. Well, the first live action TV show was The Adventures of Superman. And this one came out in like I believe the 40s or 50s, and they had several actors playing Superman, but the most notably it was George Reeve, and he was actually like one of the first ones to ever portray Superman. And I haven't seen the show. Like, I've seen bits and pieces of the show, but because I had seen Christopher Reeve play Superman, it was hard for me to actually watch it because I'm so used to seeing Christopher Reeve play Superman that I can't see anyone else playing Superman. But I know the show, but that's just my own personal opinion. Then you have years later. This was after the movies, after the Christopher Reeve movies. They did what they did the animated, they had, like animated series like where he's with like the Justice League and all that, and then they had like his own animated series, and I've never seen that one because I've never been able to find it on DVD, and I've never seen it on TV, but that then they had Lois and Clark, The Adventures of Lois and Clark, which was amazing. Wait, hold on. Sorry, I have to fix that. Okay, you had like The Adventures of Lois and Clark, which was basically, it wasn't really Superman, but it was Superman. It was just like Dean Cain playing Superman and Clark Kent, but more of like oh, Lois and Clark. Oh, let's have them get together, which I was fine with. I was 100%, 100% behind it. I was like, yes, Superman, and yes, Lois and Clark. I'm so glad that they're getting together. And what I liked about this show, I didn't watch it because it came on before I was born, and so I've never seen it on TV. But I know they followed the storyline of the comics. There's a comic that I'm still looking for. I found it at this flea market in Tulsa, one of the other flea markets in Tulsa, not the one where I got Superman Returns, but at a different flea market. And I'm like, this is like a cool comic, but at the time when I found it, I was like, I want a Superman comic that's rare. I want like a rare Superman comic. And that is the one. I have several regrets in my life, but that's one regret that I have in my life. I wish I hadn't have passed that up because it was Superman and Lois, or Lois and Clark, whatever you would call it, when they get married. It was a comic of when they get married, and I've looked for this comic, and I still have yet to find it again. And when I do find it, I'm going to buy it. And it's a great comic. It's great. I mean, I want to read it. I want to see it, and and this comic is just like the show is based on the comics, and so like when Lois and Clark or Lois and Superman get married, they have Lois and Clark get married on the show. So that's what I liked about the show is how it followed the comics because like you watch like Flash, Green Arrow, you watch Flash and Arrow and Supergirl, you watch all those shows that are on uh CW. I don't follow those characters, but I'm pretty sure they don't really follow the comics, and I wish that like TV shows and movies would follow the comics. Don't don't just make a movie about a comic but not follow the comic. Don't do that. Or a TV show that actually follows the comics. And then probably the most well known sorry, my ear itches. Probably the most well known Superman TV show is Smallville. It was actually the one that was on the longest. It aired for 10 seasons, and actually I wasn't able to buy it because I had to buy my other niece's birthday present because her birthday's coming up, and I had to buy that, and so I didn't have enough money to buy it, and I wanted this Wonder Woman comic, so I didn't get to buy it, but I'm going to buy it soon. It was Smallville. DC actually, after Smallville went off the air, they actually, what they did was they made a season 11. I guess they were going to come out with season 11 on TV, but it never happened. CW never picked it back up for season 11. And so they were like, well, DC's like, well, since they're not going to come out with season 11 of Smallville, let's make a comic about it. And they actually have where I got the 3 comics, where I got all 3 of these comics, where I got all 3 of these. That place that I got them at, they actually have Smallville comic there. And so Smallville was on for 10 seasons, and it wasn't about Superman, it was about Clark Kent discovering who he was. And it was more about Clark in his teenage years and going into his adult years and working at the Daily Planet, and then spoiler alert, the last scene of the last episode of Smallville, Clark Kent, who's played by Tom Welling, he actually goes and takes off his clothes and reveals the S, takes off his shirt and reveals the S symbol, and it shows him becoming Superman. And so it wasn't about him being Superman, it was about him being Clark Kent, disguised as like a Superman. Like his like Superman, his disguise is Clark Kent. But in Smallville, Clark Kent was disguising himself as Superman. He didn't want people knowing that he was Superman. He didn't really want that power, and it was just him figure out what to do with it. And I liked the show. I haven't seen all of it. I've seen bits and pieces of it, and what I have seen is amazing. I'm trying to get the whole complete series, but it's expensive, and I don't have the money right now. But when I do get the money and I'm able to buy it, I'm going to buy it. And then here recently, I found out they're coming out, or they've already came out with one of the 2. A show called Krypton, which isn't about Superman per se. It's more about Superman's home planet Krypton before Superman was born, before Superman was even thought of, and it's just about what Krypton was like before Superman was ever born. And I think that's a great concept. And there have been several Superman like spin-off comics, like you've got Superboy, which me and my dad have gotten into several heated debates on Superboy, and I actually am pretty sure I'm correct on this because I Googled it. Superboy is actually the creation of Superman. Lex Luthor took Superman's DNA and then combined it with his DNA to create Superboy, and that's how Superboy was created. My dad thinks that, oh no, Superboy is just young Superman. I'm sorry, but it's not. Superboy is just, it technically is Superman, but it's Superman and Lex Luthor. Like, it's basically Superman and Lex Luthor had a baby together, and it became Superboy. That's what it was. And then you have Supergirl, which is Superman's cousin Kal-El. Have super. You have Superwoman, which is Lois Lane. It's just Lois Lane. All it is just Lois Lane as Superwoman. And I've always seen a couple of comics of that one, but that was more like the more recent one. And then and then you have Crypto. Crypto is Superman's dog. And Superman's dog Crypto has his own comic, which I've never read, but I've seen like a couple of them floating around. And that's about all the spin-offs that they have of Superman. But Superman is amazing. Now on to the curse. So the curse happened because, like, it happened. Well, how the curse got started was George Reeves, who played Superman in The Adventures of Superman, one of the many actors that played Superman on that show. He committed suicide. He supposedly committed suicide. I don't know much about it. There's speculation that he did, that he shot himself, but either way, he died. Well, that's what began the curse, and then like the creators Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, they didn't like the way the movies turned out, so like they put a curse on the movies, and they put a curse on Superman, and supposedly they put a curse on Superman, and before their death, and they and I believe in this curse. My dad doesn't believe in it, but I do, because explain to me how sorry, my language. Explain to me how Superman can explain to me how after the Superman movies, after those movies happened, explain to me how Margot Kidder, who played Lois Lane in those movies, how she became homeless after those movies. She couldn't find a job after those movies. She was legitimately homeless, like literally homeless. She had no home. She was on the streets, living on the streets. Explain to me that. Explain to me how Christopher Reeve. Explain to me how he got hurt by doing horseback riding. How he became a quadriplegic while horseback riding. Explain to me that. Explain to me how Marlon Brando got sick and died. Explain to me that. Explain to me how they tried making a Superman movie after Superman 4: Quest for Peace without Christopher Reeve, and it never went off the ground until Superman Returns. Explain to me that. Explain to me about that. Explain to me how Brendan Routh, or Ruth, however you pronounce his name, last name Routh. Explain to me how after Superman Returns, he wasn't able to do anything afterwards until he got like on some DC show on the CW. Explain to me that. Explain to me how there's not as many Superman movies as there are Batman movies. Explain to me like why, like I think it's the curse. And explain to me how Tom Welling, after Smallville, he hasn't really done much after Smallville. He's doing this one show called the Lucifer. He's going to be on that show this week, and I want to see it, but I gotta watch my show, The Voice. I gotta watch The Voice. But explain to me, Tom Welling, how he hasn't been able to find really any good work since Smallville. Explain to me that. Explain to me how Terrence Stamp, who played General Zod in Superman 2, how he couldn't really find much work. I mean, he did voice Jor-El in Smallville, but that was it. Explain to me, same way with Gene Hackman, where's he at now? I mean, just care to explain, like, all of that. I believe that the curse is real. Because how can all of this happen? How can all of this happen? And like Dean Cain, where's Dean Cain now? He hasn't been doing much. So I believe that the curse is real because look at what happened. Like the the uh, the actors fell into oblivion. They weren't able to do much after the movies and after the TV shows, and then what? Two of the actors ended up dying, and one of them that died was a quadriplegic, and just like how does that happen? There had to be a curse. My dad doesn't believe in the curse, but I do. So that's basically the curse. And the final thing that I have about Superman is that he's got so many villains. He's got Lex Luthor, General Zod, Mr. Mxyzptlk, Doomsday, Darkseid. Like, I looked up here recently all the villains that he had, and I'm like, I didn't realize that he had this many villains. And it's like, what? He had this many villains? And I couldn't believe it. And also, he's been around for many years, and I think it's amazing that they're trying to revive him with these movies and with like Justice League and Batman v Superman, which I enjoyed. I loved that movie. I like the extended version more than I do the theatrical version, but that's just my opinion. And Superman, in my opinion, is the greatest superhero because of all of his powers that he has and like what he fights for. He fights for truth, justice, and the American way. And like I have so much like respect and love for him because what he's done. So that's all I have for you today. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And hit that notification bell so you can know when I'm going to be doing another video. And next week I'm doing Halloween music. And so for the next 3 weeks, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah, next 3 or 4 weeks that we're going to be doing Halloween related stuff on Mondays, and then this Friday I'm doing Contra. So look out for that. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can see when I'm going to be doing another stream or what I'm going to be uploading. Bye!